There is nothing wrong with being an introvert, and there's nothing wrong with us being ourselves. There's nothing wrong with us stepping into who we are. There are times where we might have that great idea. We might have that thing to share that really the group needs. Everyone's going to be better for it if we share that idea. And we have to have that courage to not worry all the time about what other people are thinking about us, or to think we're going to be judged if, we say something and it's wrong, or any of that, right? Unfortunately, happens a lot of times in corporate America is we get labeled as, oh, this person's not adding value. And it may not be that we don't have anything to add. It's just, we're just not saying it in that moment. But I would say on the flip side though.
Hello. Welcome to another Knowledge Bomb episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential and together change the world. Today on Lead to Greatness, we have Terrance Lee, AKA the Introvert Leader. If this is your first time joining us, please consider subscribing and hit that notification bell and hit that like button. This will be greatly appreciated in helping getting out this content to great leaders and great individuals like yourself. Terrance has taken on many leadership and management roles as an introvert at several Fortune 500 companies in the defense industry with proven results. He has made it his mission to help empower other introverts to tap into their own inner leadership potential. Terrance is an author of an amazing Amazon-selling book, Quiet Voice Fearless Leader. Please help me welcome Terrance with the Introvert Leader. Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
So my name is Terrance Lee. My platform is called The Introvert Leader, and my platform is all about empowering people with introverted personalities at work, in business, and in life, and also educating people that are extroverted on how to work better with introverts. So that's really what I'm about, and that's what I enjoy doing.
Awesome. What's the most exciting part about what you do?
I would say the most exciting part about what I do is getting to take somebody that views their personality type or views being an introvert as a bad thing and getting them to view that in a different light. I love just taking people that, their confidence might be impacted, or they might feel like they have to be somebody else to be successful, and getting them to realize that they can walk in who they are and they can be true to who they are and still find that success and find that purpose. So for me, that's what makes what I do exciting. And that's why I love it.
Wow. So let me ask you this. So early on, your experience before you actually received the knowledge?
Yeah. So, for me, it's a long story. It goes back, so I like to kind of start from the beginning. So, when I was a kid, I started out really loud. I was like very outgoing. I was meeting a lot of new friends all the time because my dad, we moved around a lot when I was growing up. So I would get to these new schools and I would be like, the new kid and be meeting people and everything. And that's how I was for a long time, up until about the 7th grade. And when I was in the 7th grade, I had an incident happen with a choir director that really just impacted my confidence in a lot of ways. And I found myself becoming a lot quieter, a lot more reserved, and that really carried into high school and to college. And I always had my friend groups and everything. And, I played basketball in high school. So it's not that like I didn't have any friends or anything like that, but I was just known as, well, Terrance is kind of reserved. He's kind of quiet, right? Like that was just my personality. And so for a long time, and even into college, I thought that it limited me. And I would just never want to do anything having to do with leadership. So if there were ever any roles for like student government or anything having to do with leadership, I just wouldn't do them. And that carried into my career as well. When I started as an engineer, I would just be in meetings and wouldn't say anything. I'd have these great ideas, but I would just kind of keep them to myself. I was just having all these things going through my head, and I didn't even realize where they were coming from. And what happened was eventually people started to tell me that they saw leadership potential in me. And it was a potential that I didn't see. I was like, are you all really talking about me? The quiet guy. But people kept saying it. And I started to get in these leadership roles. And, now I'm in leadership roles at a Fortune 500 defense contractor where I work as a program manager for a large program. And so really, the question of kind of how did I get to that knowledge, or where did it come? I think it's just been a journey where I've realized that I can be myself. I can have my personality, and I can still be a leader. I can still be strong. I can still be effective. I may not be the loudest person in the room. I may not have the personality of someone that's more on the extroverted side, but it doesn't mean I can't lead. So, yeah, that's just a little bit about my journey and how I got there.
Yeah. For some introverts that are listening right now, some of those things that, I guess being silent have that potential. And I can speak for myself for so excited about this interview because I grew up the same way. And my thing was I had a speech impediment when I was in elementary. And you know how elementary kids are, they made fun of me or whatever. And it went on for years until I found a passion and I began to open up in that. But I've seen a lot of things, throughout my career in the corporate world that I was passed over, not because of my ability, but because of my silence. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That happens a lot. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about society being educated on introversion, because I
Yeah.
think that in corporate America, the thought is the people that talk the most or the people that are the loudest are the ones that bring the most value, or
Mm.
they're the ones that have the most to say and they just naturally would make better leaders. Like that's the assumption. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. I mean, just because somebody talks more or talks a lot, that doesn't mean they make a better leader. Some of the best leaders in the world are introverts.
Yeah.
Some of the, most successful entrepreneurs in the world are introverts. You look at an Elon Musk, a Jeff Bezos, from a leadership perspective, a Barack Obama, right? You have these different people that have more introverted personalities. They may not be the loudest in the room, but they're powerful.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a big misperception in society that, somehow if somebody is quieter, that they're weak or passive or something like that. Cause yeah, that's just not true.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely experienced that. And I totally agree that's so far from the truth. And I want to talk about your book, Quiet Voice, Fearless Leader. What inspired you to write this book and why?
Yeah. So, really going back to just my story, I mean, that's really what inspired the book. I looked up and I saw myself in these leadership roles where I am now in my career. And I said to myself, I said, there have to be other people out there that feel the same way I did. Like there have to be other people out there that are struggling and feel like they can't lead, or they're trying to figure out how to get to the next step in their career or in their business, and they think their personality is a setback. They think that there's something wrong with being who they are. And so I really wrote the book with, those people in mind, because I wanted to just shine a light on the fact that being an introvert is not a bad thing. It's not something that someone has to change, but there are things we have to do for people that are more introverted to step into who we are. And there are certain things we do have to tweak in order to grow and get to the next level. So that's really what the book's about. I mean, it's practical steps and tips. It's not just, talking about theory, right? I mean, these are direct things that I've experienced in my career, things that I've seen other introvert leaders do well. And that's really what I wanted it to do. So it's an action-based book. There are action plans at the end of every chapter. And we really get into the specifics of how an introvert can be a better leader.
What makes an introvert a great leader?
Great question. Great question. So I think it's a few things, and these are things a lot of people don't even think about, So naturally, someone that's more introverted tends to listen better, right? And a lot of that's because people that are more extroverted or more outgoing are usually talking, right? And it's nothing against them or anything like that. It's just, that's their personality. That's how they tend to operate. So when someone is talking a lot of times they're not listening, or they're missing things that someone else might be saying, right? So the introvert gets to use this as a strength,
Yeah.
because when everyone else is talking and exchanging ideas, the introvert is sitting back observing everything. They're
Yeah.
catching everything. They're taking it all in, right? And so there's certain things that, for me, I'm able to catch that the team is missing, because everyone else is, talking and they want to talk things out. It's not that I don't want to talk. It's just I'm catching things that they're missing.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big introvert strength that I would say.
Yeah, pretty amazing, man. And it is so true. And I know early on, because I don't know for me, and I want to hear your side of it as well. But I don't know. Like I said, when I found my passion, I began to talk more. And for the most part, I'm still, I have to go to that place. I have to charge in silence. I have places throughout the house, in the backyard, on the porch, depending on the time of the day where I go sit and recharge. But most people tell them I'm an introvert. They would look at me like I'm nuts. Like, yeah, right. How people see you.
Yeah, it's interesting because it depends on who you would ask, because to some people, the word introvert, they're like, what do you mean? you know, because when I'm around my closest friends or certain family members and everything, I can talk all day.
Yeah,
We'll crack jokes, we'll talk, everything like that.
yeah,
But I think with me, what happens is when I'm in a group and it's people maybe I'm meeting for the first time, maybe I don't know them as well. It kind of takes me a minute to like warm up to really get where someone that's more extroverted or different, they can go in a room full of strangers and be totally comfortable. And that's just not really me.
yeah.
So I think it depends on who you talk to, because everyone is different, I think, in different circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely in observation mode, when I go in a new environment. That's definitely what I'm doing.
Right. What prevents introverts from advancing in their careers?
So I think it's a few things. I will say that from the perspective of the introvert, one thing, and this is an area that, we have to work in, right, is just the confidence and the courage to speak up. So there is nothing wrong with being an introvert, and there's nothing wrong with us being ourselves. There's nothing wrong with us stepping into who we are. At the same time, though, there are times where we might have that great idea. We might have that thing to share that really the group needs. And really, everyone's going to be better for it if we share that idea. And so we have to have that courage to not worry all the time about what other people are thinking about us, or to think we're going to be judged if, we say something and it's wrong, or any of that, right? We really have to work through and build up that courage to speak up, because when we don't speak up, what unfortunately happens a lot of times in corporate America is we get labeled as, oh, this person's not adding value, right? Or this person isn't bringing something to the conversation. And it may not be that we don't have anything to add. It's just, we're just not saying it in that moment. And so it's very important that we do add that value and we speak up. But I would say on the flip side, though, for people in society that are more extroverted in those situations, they have to help create the environment to where we feel comfortable to speak up. So I'm in certain, meetings, and there are things, conversations. And when people are talking and there's like a lot of interrupting going on, or people are in a meeting and someone says something, they get cut off immediately, right? Like those kind of environments, especially for someone that's more introverted, is not going to typically make them want to speak up, or they're not going to feel heard, right? So I think society has to also create environments and scenarios where the introvert does feel comfortable to speak up. Because if I know that as soon as I talk, I'm going to get cut off, well, what's the point of me giving input, right? So I think there's responsibility on both sides in that case, I would say.
Yeah. I have a big issue with conversations that if it seems like foolishness or something's like, oh man, that's crazy. I don't even waste my energy indulging in or trying to prove my case. I just shut out. Or if I'm explaining something to someone and you have that individual, they're not teachable. So easy for me to shut them off and just move on without having any, remorse about it. I mean, I just move right along. What about you?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, that's difficult for me.
Yeah.
Like people that, yeah, that's so key what you said, not teachable,
Yeah.
right? Like somebody that you're trying to have a conversation and it's just almost like talking to a brick wall to a certain degree. Like if someone already has their mind made up, they're not willing to be flexible. Yeah, that's a tough one for me. I have a hard time with those conversations too.
Yeah. What has been your biggest challenge as an introvert?
So my biggest challenge, I would say for me, my biggest challenge, and I'm continuing to work through it. I mean, I've made a lot of strides,
Yeah.
but I continue to work through it, is just being okay with being me. And I know that might sound cliche. I know that might sound like, just something that, people say, but it's the reality for me. For a long time, I thought I had to be louder, or I thought I had to have a different personality. I thought I had to be someone else, because when I would see leaders, or when I would think about leadership in corporate and business or wherever, I would picture this person that had the loud voice, this person that when they walk in a room, they're dominating the conversation. Like that's how I viewed leadership for so long. And I continually, I've come a long way, a very long way. Like now I'm very comfortable in who I am, and I feel strength in that. But from time to time, there's still those times where, I'll see a certain leadership style, or I'll see somebody like I was listening to a Tony Robbins interview, I think it was last week, and just the way that he kind of carries himself, the way he talks, does speaking engagements and stuff. And I'm like, man, do I need to try to sound like that? And I had to check myself. It's like, nah, Terrance, that's not you. Like, that's not your personality, and that's okay. So I still have the thoughts come in. So yeah, I would say that's probably been my biggest challenge, is just authenticity, being good with being me, being comfortable with being me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not characterizing and saying everybody that's loud is in this category, but I've met plenty of people that's loud, got to be the center of attention. And most of the time they had a strong insecurity about themselves. And it's like it's covered up by this, loud and have to be heard or seen. What's your thought on that?
I agree. I agree. I've seen the same thing. And it's interesting because there are people that are friends of mine that are more extroverted. And I'm one of those friends that they typically could confide in and we could talk to. And so there are times where, there'll be a certain way when we're around a group, but then they might pull me to the side.
You know the real, right?
I know the real. Like, I know it's like, all right, you're saying that because everyone's around, but when it's just us, you'll actually tell me, what's what. So I think you're 100% with that.
We're having this conversation, I'm thinking, because I remember one time, I think I was probably about 17, 18 years old. I was put on program to speak. I remember doing that program. I didn't show up. I did not show up. I was that afraid. I did not show up. And now I do a lot of public speaking. I remember the first time I got on camera to do a podcast, I remember we had to turn the AC down at the house to about 50 degrees because I was just sweating to keep the sweat off. It was a really big step for me. It was a really, really huge. Most people don't know that, but it was so huge. And it's been a journey. Because I'm thinking about it, I'm like, wow. And I really haven't processed it to see, okay, what happened along that time frame, that journey? What was that journey like to get from just running from platforms to now speaking on platforms? Are you able to articulate your journey on just some processes of what happened through the process to get from where you were to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I say all the time that for me, it was a mixture of mindset shift and practice. So, there's a lot in like self-help where people talk about, changing your mindset, right? And changing the way that you see yourself, the way you talk to yourself, so I had to implement a lot of that. I was doing a lot of negative self-talk. I was, and I didn't even realize it. I'd be in meetings and I would say to myself, like, I would want to say something, but internally it's like, you don't really have to say this, or is this really a good idea? Yeah, you probably just shouldn't say anything. Like, that would all be going through my head. I didn't even realize what I was doing. I was sabotaging myself, right? So I had to get through that. But then on the flip side, and I say this a lot, people are really big on mindset, and mindset is great, but you got to actually do the work.
Yes.
You got to actually do something too. It can't just be about, I'm going to think different and things are going to happen. So I had to speak a lot. Like, I had to get very uncomfortable. I was just like you, same way. Public speaking for me, it was like, no way. I do not want to be in front of people. I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to do any of that. And I had to just keep doing it over and over and over again. And the more practice that I've gotten with it, the more that I've done it, I feel more comfortable now. But I'll be honest with you, even today, like, I did a speaking engagement last week, and right before it, I got nervous, and I'm leading these large teams and stuff now. I still get nervous sometimes, but I don't have any trouble saying that or admitting that, because I'm not perfect. I'm continuing to work on things, but it's a continuous thing. I mean, and I think that it's shifting mindset, but it's getting the practice and the repetition in. And I think when those things are paired together, for me, that's what helped in my journey. So,
wow. Now that is a knowledge bomb. Thank you for sharing that, because here's the thing. I mean, a lot of us, we don't like doing that. I mean, I'm talking what we're really feeling. And so now you have a world of everyone have it together. Everyone have it figured out. So now you have those individuals that's secretly struggling with these things. They're unable, they really thinking something wrong with them. not realizing like, man, we all human. We all make mistakes. We all have fear. That's a saying I heard years ago that I still to this day live by, and it's feel the fear and do it anyway. And I live by that. I live by that. And I have to tell myself this often. And sometimes I'm in groups and I tell people this, and they're like, oh, that's good. That's good. I remember, and I'm like, man, I still have to tell myself this same talk all the time. I have to tell myself this same talk because I'm constantly challenging myself, challenge myself to that next level, which is different and so far beyond. I want to do this. I want to do this. If you could go into a time machine and talk to 18-year-old Terrance, what would you tell him?
Man, that's a good one. That's a good one. So I would say a few things to 18-year-old Terrance. The first thing I would say is, again, and it goes back to something I said earlier, is to be okay with me and you. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Don't worry about who they are. They're who they are, right? And let them be that. Let them do that. Be okay with you. Be okay with who you are. And then the other thing that I would say too is to take more risks. Take more risks. I mean, there are so many times that there were opportunities to do things, to run for like one of the student government positions when I went to school at Florida A&M in Tallahassee. So like in college, when I got there my freshman year, I was 18 and there were these different student government offices. And I would say to myself, man, that would be really cool to do that. But it's like, nah, that's not really me. That's not for me, right? There are so many opportunities that were like that when I was around that age, high school and then going into college. And so I would just say to myself to take more risks, to not worry about being like anyone else, and to just have no fear in that way.
What are some practical leadership growth tips, tools, and advice that you can share with the Lead to Greatness community to help us reach our greatest potential?
Absolutely. So leadership for me starts with service. So I think that one of the first practical tips that I always like to share is to think about your team and think about your organization and think about first, how can you help them? So not first thinking about, okay, what do I need to do in the role? What skill set do I need to acquire? How do I get to the next level? No, the first question is, how can you help other people on your team? So I think you start there first, because it's about service leadership. Then the other thing, going back to practice. So the importance of just mastering your craft. I think as a leader, it's very important that, we do get the skill set we need to lead effectively. And so, who are the people that have already gone down the road I'm trying to go down? Is there a coach or is there a mentor I can work with, right? Like, what is the practice I need to do to become an expert in my field? So I think that's the second piece, is getting in that practice. And then the other thing is just building trust. Building trust. I'm so huge on that. I mean, if your team doesn't trust you, and if you don't have that tight-knit group, it's very hard to be an effective leader.
Absolutely.
And trust is one of those things that's really built over time. And one of the ways that you build trust is to just be there for your team, be of service to your team, right? And be consistent. When they see that you're consistently there for them and they see that you're there to help solve their problems, you're not just in the corner office sitting up while they do the work. You're actually trying to work through things with them. You're trying to help them, and you're being of service. I think that really helps to build trust. So yeah, that's a few.
Yeah, awesome. That is another knowledge bomb. Wow, thank you. As a reader, what can someone expect from you and this amazing book?
Yeah, so, this book is really meant to change lives. And I don't just say that, to say it. The format of the book is set up in a way to where anyone that reads it can take action today. Right. So there are stories in each chapter, but each chapter is built around a specific leadership principle. And so we get into 3 pillars of each of those leadership principles in each chapter. Right. So, for example, chapter 1 is all about, how do I add value? Right. So how do I add value to a team as someone that's more introverted? And so from there, we get into 3 specific pillars for how to do that. From there, every chapter also has a section called What Introverts Wish Extroverts Knew, because I think it's very important for people that are more extroverted to understand how the introvert mind works and how they can work better with us. And so that's in each chapter as well. And then we conclude each chapter with a plan of action. And so now that you've read through the chapter and you've gotten the principles, you've gotten the pillars, now what are the key takeaways and what can you do to actually take that and implement it to your life today? So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of stories in there. It's very transparent. I talk about a lot of my failures. I talk about a lot of my mistakes, things that I've learned, but I do it in a way to where hopefully people read those and they're able to implement the lessons learned into their lives. So yeah, that's what it's all about.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. If someone wanted to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they go?
Yeah, so best way to connect with me on social media, I'm at the Introvert Leader on all platforms. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And also people can connect with me on my website at quietvoicefearlessleader.com. People can go there to get the book in paperback, ebook, or audio. And I also give away the first chapter for free if anybody wanted to check that out as well. So that's all on my website.
Awesome, 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 awesome. Terrance, on behalf of the Lead to Greatness community, we want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been amazing. I've really enjoyed this. Excellent questions. This was a lot of fun.
And don't forget to subscribe to Lead to Greatness if this is your first time. And if this podcast was helpful to you, leave a big thumbs up. And also, I want you to check out our Marriage Coach podcast, the podcast with my wife and I. If you're on iTunes, please rate this podcast and leave a review and help get the word out. Again, thank you, Lead to Greatness Nation, for joining us on today. Looking forward to seeing you again on next week. Till then, remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace. We out.